When we mention the Chicago Bears, I want to start with Ben Johnson. I'm going to kind of go through what I'm looking for as we head into training camp. Give you a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And let's start first with, I'm not going to be paying attention to the preseason results. For the month of August, the game score, the box score, for me, it doesn't matter. And even when I am trying to glean information and figure out which way I'm leaning, which way I'm going, I still think when week one rolls around, I don't think we're going to know a ton about this team. And to be very fair, this team may not know a ton about themselves in September. And hopefully that's something that they'll be able to build and turn into a successful product by the time we're giving each other toasts on Thanksgiving. But there are some things that I'm keeping an eye on. And some things that I hope Chicago Bears fans keep an eye on too as well. Just things that you can kind of bookmark and check. Save and then come back to a little bit later once the season gets rolling. Because I have a ton of questions when it comes to Ben Johnson and how he's going to run his first training camp. The first one that I'm thinking about is I am as optimistic of a Bears fan as anybody else. I want the Chicago Bears to be good yesterday. I want the Chicago Bears competing for Super Bowls. I want them in the playoffs every year. I want double-digit wins to be a prerequisite to a season and not the hope and prayer that we've been living off of for, honestly, 5 or 6 years now. So there's a part of me that's hoping that Ben Johnson comes in, everything clicks, they're good right off the bat. They take the NFL by storm. They take the North and they never give it back, quoting Ryan Poles. And we're off and running in the Ben Johnson era. But as training camp starts, I am trying to remind myself about one particular aspect that we can't quite feel right now, but maybe we're going to feel in the next year or two. And the most important thing that I keep thinking about is that while it is true, publicly stated, and I would agree that this is probably factual behind the scenes too as well, that Ben Johnson, a major reason why he chose the Chicago Bears, not just because of the Chicago Bears brand and legacy and, oh yeah, the money, is that Ben Johnson got a chance to choose his quarterback. And Ben Johnson has chosen Caleb Williams. For right now. At least for the next 2 years, right? Ben Johnson can always look at his situation. If Caleb doesn't play well, he can always move on. That's a story for another day. But at this moment right now, when Ben Johnson had several different options, he had the Las Vegas Raiders option, the most common one. Ben Johnson decided to come to Chicago, and one of the major components and one of the main components was Caleb Williams. But what is the old saying? In Ben Johnson's case, you can choose your quarterback, but you can't choose your roster. And that's what I'm keeping an eye on. We can talk all we want about how Ben Johnson wants to coach Caleb Williams. But in many ways, Ben Johnson is still inheriting a large portion of this roster that Ryan Poles has put together. And it's hard to say right now with just Ben Johnson's public comments, but I think you're going to learn something in the first couple weeks of training camp. And I think it's going to be a little bit about what Ben Johnson feels like and how he's assessing this larger group of players. And it's quite possible that Ben Johnson, at the end of this year, we see a very significant turnover of this roster because he wants to bring more of his type of guys in. And I go back to the NFL draft, and when the NFL draft was completed, I remember I gave the Chicago Bears a C+, because I think they deserved it. I'm a big upfront in the trenches guy. Get the infrastructure, get the foundation of this team as solid as you can, and then build from the outside. Again, the Chicago Bears went heavy on offense, and to be very fair, Ryan Poles and his draft decisions, it's been quite a mixed bag. I don't think Ryan Poles deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to drafting NFL players. I just don't. And I wish more than anything that he will eventually change my mind. And maybe by the end of this year, my mind will be changed because of the players that he drafted last year and the players that he drafted this year. If there are two strong draft classes together, we're going to change the way I think about this. But I gave the Chicago Bears a C+ because I was kind of scratching my head that they went so heavy on skill position players. And I know they spend a ton of money on the offensive line. But personally, I thought they could have used more of it. On the defensive line, I personally thought they could have used an impact edge rusher. And even with the skill position, I thought they could have used a dynamic running back in a dynamic, deep running back NFL draft class. Now, they brought in 7th-round draft pick Kyle Monangai, but I thought that they were going to attack it a little bit earlier. No, they tackled tight end. They went after a wide receiver. And yes, they went after the offensive line, but as their 3rd pick in that 2nd round. And there's a part of me that's just trying to make some sense of this, of if you're Ben Johnson and you think that I love this roster, I love the components that are already on offense, and I just think we're a couple of plugs, a couple of holes away at some key positions to take us over the top. And the more that I'm looking at it, the way that he targeted those players specifically, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, those are picks that I think are built for the long term. And I'm asking myself the question of what does Ben Johnson think about the roster of this team? Are these the players up and down through the 53-man roster that Ben Johnson is signing off on? Or is he trying to target a bigger picture infrastructure for what he wants? And could this also possibly be a little bit of a transition year? Not a great comparison, but we did a lot of talk last year with the Chicago Cubs about Craig Counsell kind of sitting back a little bit, not being too hands-on, and sort of assessing the process mechanisms that go on with the Chicago Cubs and their roster at hand. They went out in the offseason, they changed a lot of their roster complexity-wise, brought in a lot more depth from the starting rotation position, brought in more of a bullpen guy, traded for a guy like Kyle Tucker, changed some significant parts of the team. And you see now the team's a really good base running team. It's even better defensively. They have a solid bullpen, and maybe it's more of a reflection of who Craig Counsell is. So my question is, with this team as currently constituted right now, is it a reflection of Ben Johnson's type of team? When we hear quotes from him in the offseason, he talks a lot about process and philosophy. He has not spent a ton of time outside of a lot of Caleb talk, a little DJ Moore. That's pretty much it in terms of players and what he likes about them. He's talking a lot about process, how he wants to coach them, how he wants them to execute. And I'm wondering throughout training camp, does that messaging stay the same, or does he start talking a little bit more about players and individual performances and what he has liked and what he likes to see? Is it possible that he gets out there and maybe this first coaching year, maybe he's coaching some guys that he didn't necessarily sign off on, or guys that in his perfect scenario he wouldn't necessarily have on his depth chart? That's what I'm curious to see with this Bears training camp. Who's in and who's out? Who's a Ben Johnson type of player, and maybe who's not going to be on the team after this year? And there's plenty of time for maybe some players right now that aren't fitting in the Ben Johnson mold. There's plenty of time for those players to get in there, commit themselves, and turn into a Ben Johnson type of player, or turn into whatever type of winning environment Ben Johnson wants to create. They'll have that opportunity. And when I say something like that, it leads me to my next point. And this phrase, don't get me wrong, is incredibly cliche. But if you believe in Ben Johnson, and if you believe that he is largely responsible for the Detroit Lions not only having one of the best offenses in the NFL, in several metrics, putting up some of the best offensive numbers the NFL as a league in its history has ever seen, if you believe in that Ben Johnson, and you think that that is going to carry over here into Chicago, the phrase that I'm looking for, and I'm looking for early on in training camp, is a little word we like to call buy-in. Are the players buying into the message? Are the players buying into the scheme? Are the players buying into the philosophy and the work ethic and what Ben Johnson is putting out in front of them to achieve goal-wise? And I know that it's cliche, but you can't argue with me on this one fact. If you have buy-in, it does raise the probability percentages of you executing your goal, your task. If you're buying into what Ben Johnson is selling, it does give you a higher probability that you will execute out there on the field. If you don't buy into what Ben Johnson's saying, and if you're a player and you're like, man, I don't really like this guy, or you know what, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. If you don't have buy-in, you can still execute. Don't get me wrong. But you cannot disagree with me that if you have buy-in, it does give you a higher probability of executing what you need to do. And look no further than what the Detroit Lions do. You know, I'm not in the locker rooms with Dan Campbell, but I can tell you that those players buy into his message. And because they buy into his message, they do what is asked of them. And he asks a lot from them. They ask him to be tough, so they get tough. He asks them to not just talk about adversity, but live through adversity, and then they do it, right? And if you buy in, you have a stronger potential chance to execute what you need to do out there. And execute whether that's running a route, whether it's setting your pass block, whether it's getting after the quarterback, whether it's locking down a man in man coverage. If you're buying in, you have a stronger possibility of the success of execution. And let's be honest here, that cliche word buy-in, did the players ever buy into Matt Eberflus? No. I do think there was a stretch where the players bought into Matt Nagy's message. And they ran with it for as long as they could. And I think when Matt Nagy maybe either needed to innovate or maybe take his coaching or their scheme to the next level, he was unable to get there. And when he was unable to get there, I think that's when the buy-in began to erode with the Chicago Bears. Matt Eberflus, I'm sure there was times when there was a collection of players that bought into what Matt Eberflus was doing. I remember his first year as a coach. They didn't commit a lot of penalties. They played a relatively clean game. But when you see coaching mistakes, adjustment in scheme, decisions that are incorrect, and the losses begin to pile up, it's easy for that buy-in to erode. And when it erodes, that's when execution goes out the window. And Chicago Bears fans, we know all about how that Bears team last year failed to execute. So if in those first couple weeks we start seeing players buy into what Ben Johnson is selling, I think it gives them a leg up to possibly execute and have a successful season. So what I'm looking at, is Ben Johnson talking about individual player performance, or does he keep hammering on philosophy? Because philosophy is kind of my way or the highway, and maybe I don't have the horses right now that I'm going to eventually have on this roster, and that could maybe be a small hint that Ben Johnson or the Chicago Bears could be in for a bit of a transition year. The other one is, if the veterans and these players do fully buy into what Ben Johnson and the coaches are trying to sell and push, it will give them a better chance to execute. And I do think it gives them a leg up or an advantage in the regard of, I do really like Joe Thuney coming in. I do really like Grady Jarrett coming in. I think those are two veterans that can also help relay the message, not verbally, but through their actions and their work ethic and how they go about their business that hopefully rubs off on other players and helps them get through a bit of this execution part. The other thing that I'm taking a look at here is, obviously I want to take a look at the rookies, right? Luther Burden just signed his rookie contract. Good for him. I want to see him on the field. He's been dealing with, soft tissue injuries most of this offseason. I want to see him on the field. With rookies, man, they got to get as many reps as they can in training camp to get up to speed, build up some trust, and be in a position to be used in a game situation. And then they get to make a play, and then more trust is built, and then the rookies assimilate and then can become important cogs in an offense or on a team. Good news on Colson Loveland, ready for training camp. They did say that he's going to go through a bit of a ramp-up period. This was reported by Brad Biggs, excellent reporter on the Chicago Bears beat. So it's good to see him out there. You want to keep him healthy, but you want to get him out there as much as you can, catching balls from Caleb, learning the scheme. I've said it 1,000 times. When you're a tight end, it does come a little bit slower for you because a lot more is asked of you in terms of pass blocking, run blocking assignment. And if you don't, and what did Ben Johnson famously say? No block, no rock. So if you're a rookie and if you're a Colson Loveland fan and you want to see him immediately out there week 1 catching 7 or 8 balls, I will ask you to pump the brakes and show some patience because there's a lot more than nitty-gritty details that us fans might not see that he needs to prove to the coaching staff before he goes out there and becomes this huge offensive weapon. Excited to see Kyle Monangai get some touches. Again, I'm a big fan of this guy. I'm going to continue to stand for him. I'm going to continue to back him up. I will tell you, if I had a sneaky little pick right now, I think you're going to fall in love with Kyle Monangai in the preseason. I would not pay attention to box score, would not pay attention to game score, but I will tell you, when we walk out of our preseason, there's always an offensive darling, and we're always saying to ourselves, who is that guy? Or there's one offensive player that makes the second half of a preseason game palatable, watchable. I think Kyle Monangai might be that guy for us this preseason. Excited to watch him. Ruben Hippolyte, I just want to see him on special teams because I think that's going to be how he's going to have to contribute in year 1. Barring an injury, and hopefully there isn't, I think Ruben Hippolyte's going to have to turn into a guy that provides some energy and just does his job on special teams. And look, I'm not knocking it for a second. I think that's really an important thing. Other news and notes, Braxton Jones. Good news on Braxton Jones. There was a little bit of some trepidation, and I don't know, I'm not going to say that there was a worry, but I think a lot of people were questioning whether Braxton Jones was going to be ready for training camp after his offseason ankle surgery. Good news on that front, is going to be ready for training camp. I don't think they're going to throw him out to the Wolves right away. I think, again, just like Colson Loveland, I do believe that he's probably going to be in for a ramp-up period. But excited to see him. And Braxton Jones is a solid player. And if you want to get into the game of being really excited for the future of Ozzie Trapillo, he is a gigantic dude. And there's a lot to like about him, personality-wise, physicality-wise. He needs to just go out there and do it. But we got plenty of time for that. My preference personally is that Braxton Jones continues to be that solid, above-average left tackle protecting Caleb Williams. And maybe he gets a little bit of a bump production-wise, execution-wise, playing against Joe Thuney. I honestly would rather have that and have Ozzie Trapillo learn for a little while, sit on the bench, and provide a little bit of some depth. So I think you're going to see a little bit of some Ozzie Trapillo early on, but it's good news that Braxton Jones probably will be in the mix earlier than a lot of people were anticipating. And when you're talking about an offseason injury, it's great news that he's healthy now. But again, it needs to be battle-tested, NFL-tested, football-tested out there. And he has not had the opportunity in the offseason to get stronger and go through his normal workout plan. So he is still a little bit behind the 8 ball. He needs to get ramped up a little bit. But it's really good to see, and it's an exciting development for this offensive line that hopefully is trying to find continuity for the first time in years and years and years. A couple other small ones before my big one here. You're listening to Sports Talk Chicago. I am Joey Christopoulos. This is WLS AM 890. Happy Saturday. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend in Chicago. Doing a Chicago Bears training camp preview. By the time you're listening to this, they are probably in day 2 of training camp. I'm taping this a little bit earlier in the week because I got a lot going on. But I'm excited. It's an exciting time. I'm not going to buy too much into it, but these are just some things that I'm excited to watch and, kind of take some notes on a little bit as we move along. One of the interesting pieces of news, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, is that Jalen Johnson is going to miss a few weeks, so the first few weeks of training camp due to a non-football injury, some type of leg injury that happened in the offseason. I am not going to sit here and question injuries. I did see, I'm just giving you the full scope of everything. There were some people and some rumblings and whispers and small, tiny little unsubstantiated reports that maybe all of a sudden Jalen Johnson is already upset with his contract 1 year into signing the deal. because some other guys signed a big deal and now he's further down the ranks of highest paid defensive back? I sincerely hope that is not the case. But if this is a something or nothing, I am going to go with this is a little bit of a something. Jalen Johnson, by and large, outside of Montez Sweat, he's probably your best defensive player on the team. And if you go up and down the roster, I think he easily gets into the top 5, top 6 of most talented Chicago Bear right now. Him missing time is not good news. This is a brand new coaching staff. It's not just about Ben Johnson. It's also about defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. One of the things I'm really curious to see with Dennis Allen, and this was broken down beautifully last week by ESPN's Mina Kimes, were some of the differences between Matt Eberflus's system and Dennis Allen's system. And just to be easy cut and dry for you, boil it down. Matt Eberflus last year liked to play a lot of zone coverage. Basically, the bend, don't break. Make sure you tackle. Don't give up the big play. And you would see that, right? They would give up some long drives, but they kept the point totals really low. Dennis Allen, on the other hand, likes to run a lot of man coverage. He's aggressive up the middle, and he likes to put his talented players on defense one-on-one against certain guys, let them go toe-to-toe, make it scrappy, make it frisky, and make it difficult for you to get into your scheme or get into your routes. Mina Kimes did a great job last week of detailing how the Chicago Bears ran a ton of zone last year. And their metrics were anywhere in the teens to maybe even the low 20s in different metrics, depending on what you're looking at. When they ran man coverage, they were a really strong defensive unit. Now, smaller sample size, but it does make you intrigued to see if Dennis Allen does deploy some of the more traditional tactics and tricks that he's used throughout his entire NFL career. And he's not a good NFL head coach, but he's been a damn good defensive coordinator. We could be seeing more man coverage for the Chicago Bears this season on defense. And if that's the case, guess who benefits the most from that? Jalen Johnson. So I get it, it's a few weeks, but anytime one of your important players misses time and an important player misses those first few crucial practices of install with your new defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, it just doesn't make me feel great. I hope he gets as healthy as possible. And when he gets healthy, he stays healthy. And this is the right thing. And they're taking caution and doing all that good stuff. But I will say, something or nothing, it is a little something that Jalen Johnson is missing the first few weeks of camp. The other interesting thing I'm interested to see is a little bit of that zone run scheme. Obviously, bringing in Drew Dahlman as a center, he's a zone running offensive lineman. We haven't seen a ton of that here in Chicago. DeAndre Swift is a zone running back. Ben Johnson loves running zone. Zone helps out a lot with the play action. It helps out with the wide receiver screen game. I'm excited to see just a little bit of that. But let's be honest, when we talk about offensive install, it's either going to be kept under lock and key, or we're just not going to see a ton of it in preseason action. I think those inter-squad matchups that the Chicago Bears have scheduled, where they have another NFL team come and they practice, and it probably gets maybe 70 to 75% real. I think that's an interesting aspect. And I think when the good, great reporters in Chicago covering it report back to what they've seen and what they've heard, I'm interested to hear what they have to say about that. But that, I think, will be a little bit more of a work in progress. And there is one more big one, and it involves the quarterback when it comes to training camp and what I'm keeping an eye on here for the Chicago Bears as they kick off what's hopefully going to be a successful season. My final thought, the thing that I want to file away about Chicago Bears training camp before I get to some Cubs trade deadline talk, is I've done this before, so if you guys are coming back to the show again, forgive me. For those of you listening to the first time, this is just kind of all I want in life. When it comes to a great quarterback play, of course I want to see it on the field. Can't see it on the field right now. We're just dealing with the here and now. And what I'm going to be gleaming and kind of writing down in my little notebook and filing it away for maybe sometime later in the season is when it comes to Caleb and when it comes to Ben Johnson and this new offense, I, just like many others, and just like you're doing right now, I love consuming Chicago sports content and media. I'll listen to the radio. I love following all the different great reporters that do wonderful work throughout the city of Chicago, whether it's Adam Hogue or Adam Johns, Kevin Fishbane, Brad Biggs, one of my favorites of all time, the now departed, rest in peace, Jeff Dickerson, Mark Potash, wonderful reporter, now retired. There's so many different voices, and I just love that they've seen it all and they've been through so many different years. And look, they're not here to sugarcoat it. And if anything, from their objective perspective, they kind of want what we want. They want a great quarterback into Chicago. They're tired of writing the story of the middling quarterback, of can he reach his potential? Is he a franchise guy? Maybe he's not the franchise guy. Oh no, what do we do? Oh great, we're starting all over again. Rinse and repeat. I think they would enjoy the fresh challenge of trying to write about great quarterback play here in Chicago. And every single year when you tune into the reports, a reporter comes on a radio station and the person in the booth always asks, hey, how the quarterback looking? How'd the offense do today? And every single year, I feel like my entire life, especially from Jeff Dickerson, he would just go, guys, it was a little mixed out there. It's a little up and down. I've said this before on the show. The defense won today. And sometimes as a Chicago Bears fan, that can be deceiving because we love our defense in this town. And when the defense dominates, we go, yeah, we like it. Good defense. Chicago Bears. 85 Bears, bear down. Kind of tired of hearing it. I would love nothing more than a reporter watching training camp of a Chicago Bears quarterback to go onto the airwaves and go, guys, I got some news for you. Caleb Williams dominated practice today. The offense carved up the defense today. In the whatever drill, Caleb looked good. When they ran 7-on-7, the ball was never on the ground. Caleb looks decisive. Caleb isn't holding on to the ball too long. Caleb hit this deep shot today to Roma Dunze. It was beautiful. And I get it. In training camp, you're working through the kinks. This is a new system. It's a new head coach. I'm not asking for perfection out there. And I will even go as far as to say there probably will be plenty of moments when maybe Caleb has an off sequence, maybe even a full off day. But on the other side of it, as a Bears fan, please, praying to Hallis, can we just get a couple of days where people come back and report that Caleb looks awesome? Caleb looks comfortable. Caleb looks dominant. Caleb is picking up Ben Johnson's offense. The deep ball looks good. The ball's getting out of his hands fast. He's making good decisions. The offense is humming. Because I'm going to state the obvious. Those things in practice then transfer over to preseason. Preseason then transfers over to the regular season. Rock and roll. Let's go. Everybody douse themselves in the beautiful waters of Bears optimism. And let's start talking ourselves into double-digit wins. But every single year, I feel like every quarterback we've ever had, it's either talk about interceptions, lack of anticipation, holding on to the ball too long. We hear every once in a while about, a string of false starts, maybe 1 or 2 or 5 too many in a practice. 7-on-7 when there's no tackling, there's no pass rush, it's all just getting the ball out, that the balls are hitting the ground, there's incompletions. We hear about this all the time, and I don't mean to put this on Caleb because he doesn't deserve it. But as a Bears fan, this is what I've heard my whole life coming out of training camp. And as we enter into this training camp, maybe I'm just like manifesting this or I'm praying. I really can't tell. But it would be great if we walked into a training camp just once, just one time. And every once in a while, a reporter will come back and say, Caleb looked awesome. Caleb looks ready. The talk of Caleb taking a leap in year 2, it could be real. Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams together could be a match made in heaven. And those are the things that I'm looking for in training camp. And if I get those things, it doesn't mean that the Chicago Bears are going to win the Super Bowl, but I will tell you, it will get me starting to feel a little bit better. And I do just think in general, it will put the Chicago Bears on a better track heading into the season to hopefully get off to a good start. And what's probably going to be a very much hyped, very competitive Monday Night Football game in Chicago against the Minnesota Vikings.